Good evening, everybody. We're now live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting this evening. We have had apologies this evening from our normal chair, Councillor Deacon, and also our vice chair, Councillor Clary. Therefore, I'd like to ask for a nomination for this evening's chair of the meeting. Councillor Gooch.
Okay. Goodness. Good evening. Yes, thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Mark Jepson to chair this evening.
Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Back. All in favour? Thank you. Duly appointed. Councillor Jepson, please take the chair. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the vote. I'd like to welcome everyone to East Suffolk Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And before we turn to our agenda, I'd like to say a few introductory words. Is there a bit of feedback here? Firstly, there is no test of the fire alarm system this evening, so if it sounds, please consider it to be the real and leave the building by the nearest fire exit and gather in the car park near to the Children's Centre. Please do not re-enter the building until we are told it's safe to do so by the fire service or a representative of Veritas. For the benefit of those watching at home, this meeting is being conducted physically in the conference room at our Lowestoft offices and remotely using Zoom, with the two parts of the meeting being broadcast live onto our YouTube channel. Please can I ask those in the room to speak directly and clearly into the microphone and also to switch it off when you have finished speaking. A few words to explain the committee's role. An effective overview and scrutiny committee helps to secure the efficient delivery of public services and can help to drive improvements within the council itself. It is also required to act as a counterbalance to the powers of the cabinet. We adopt a constructive, friendly approach and through our reviews aim to add value wherever possible. So agenda item 1 is apologies and absences and any substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. As already mentioned, we've had apologies from Councillor Deacon and he's substituted this evening by Councillor Green. We've also had apologies from Councillor Clary, the Vice Chair, and Councillor Thompson was due to attend, but unfortunately his train got cancelled, so he's not able to attend. And neither have substitutes. Also, in accordance with the Constitution, Councillor Bennett has recused himself as a member of this committee, but he will be attending later on remotely on Zoom as he is the Assistant Cabinet Member for the Leader of the Council. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. We'll now welcome our people for this evening. First of all, Councillor Topping, Leader of the Council. Good evening. And I'd ask the council officers to introduce themselves, going from Mr. Bing on my left.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Bing, Head of Legal and Democratic Services and Monitoring Officer.
Kerry Blair, Director of Corporate Services.
Paul Wood, Head of Economic Development and Regeneration.
Phil Harris, Head of Communications and Marketing.
And online we have Sandra. Good evening, Sandra.
Hello there, Sandra Lewis, Head of Digital Programme Management and Customer Services.
Introduce yourself and then I'll ask you.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Davis, Democratic Service Officer, Support Officer to the committee.
And last but not least, we have Agnes in the corner. There we are. I just need to ask under agenda item 2, any declarations of interest other than those of us who may be on the LGR working group. Any declarations of interest? No? Love it. Agenda item 3, this is going through very quickly. Right, in relation to the minutes of the 12th of February 2026, in relation to item 3 of the minutes regarding the 1.5 million allocated to market towns, the draft minute reflected what was stated on the night. However, the committee was recently informed there had been subsequently some changes, and a briefing note giving update on the Thriving Places Fund was circulated to committee members. A copy of that briefing note will be added to the CMIS for the public to view if they wish. Can I ask if there's any comments regarding the minutes of the 12th of February? No? Could I? You're proposing? Yep, Councillor Lynch proposed. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Back. All those in favour of those minutes on the 12th? We then have the meeting minutes of the 19th of March. Does anyone have any comments to add to those meetings? Minutes? No? Can I have a proposer for that one? Don't be shy. Councillor Molyneux. Councillor Gooch. All those in favour of those minutes? Lovely. And finally, the minutes of the 23rd of April. Any comments at all? No? Can I have a proposer for that? Those? Councillor Leach, a seconder, please. Councillor Corley, and if you're all in agreement of those minutes, they're all passed. Agenda item 4. Is to, let me just get to the right page for that. Agenda item 4 is the local government reorganisation position statement. I'm sure many of us are fairly aware of the background to this. What will be nice to hear from today is some of the detail behind it, what the leader and the officers will deliver to us. Some things that are brought to mind is, you know, how we're going to work with partners, how we bring the staff forward, how we're going to look at some of the key issues and deliver. I think, great respect, the paper submitted to us, I would call it the skeletal framework. We now need the meat and the bones added to it. I think would be a fair comment. So, Leader, you're welcome to give us an overview, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Scrutiny. It doesn't seem like a year since I was last with you. And as I said then, and as I always say to the Cabinet members when they come in here, it is daunting being here. Don't know what you're going to ask us, but we do value your input and we do value the shining of lights into areas where we might have blind spots. So I'm looking forward to you assisting me in my role, as this council is collaborative, inclusive, and I do value every one of you and look forward to you assisting me in my role. So the report has been submitted, as the Chair said, and as he said, it's the bare bones. I can't believe it was only January that this all started, and we had to get back to government by March, and it just seems to be like a roller coaster. Very briefly, the object of the exercise that the government has put before us is to transform Suffolk from 6 councils into 3 unitary authorities by April 2028. Currently, we are in the discovery phase because the government actually chose the 3 unitaries over a whole 1 unitary Suffolk. Just want to make that clear. And that decision was supported by a lot of residents. So the government actually made that decision because the residents said that they thought that was the best decision. They wanted more democracy, and there are more councillors, and they wanted more local democracy rather than the whole of Suffolk being governed by Ipswich. So we're now in the discovery phase. So we're baselining, we're asset mapping, and we're identifying risks. And all 3 unitary authorities are doing the same thing. We're establishing governance. Oh, sorry, I should have said I've got Kerry Blair here as an officer who's supporting me, and Sandra Lewis is also supporting on this item. So East Suffolk Council internally engages staff regularly, and you can see the engagement that Chris Bally is putting onto SharePoint. Members development. I'm the chair of members development, and there are members in this room that are also, it's a cross-party group. We're training up, we're supplying training through the LGA for councillors to understand what it might mean for them to become a unitary councillor. We're having monthly LGR working group meetings, which again is cross-party, and there are members in this room that are part of that. And those working groups are actually feeding back through me to the meetings I have bi-weekly with the other Suffolk leaders who are actually driving this programme forward. The next thing that is going to happen visibly from the government will be the structural change order legislation, which will take place in November. Once we get to that point, we are set in stone and it's happening, and the structural change order basically okays the birth of the new council, so to speak. At this point, I might add that for those that are aware, Suffolk County Council, as have Norfolk and Essex, have all put judicial reviews in against the government. It's not against the local councils that have been leading, the district and boroughs, it's against the government because they will have to prove that the government did not make a sound decision when they chose 3 unitaries over 1. The voluntary joint committees will then be set up, but we can actually set the voluntary joint committees up before the structural change order goes live. And we will have currently 1 place on the Ipswich and Southern Joint Committee and 2 places on the Central and Eastern Joint Committee. We were hoping for some extra places on there because at the moment the district and boroughs will have the same number of places as the county, which will become quite challenging when we decide to choose the chair. The implementation board is being coordinated by senior officers, and there's a programme management office which is delivering support, and that is also an officer run group. The work streams have been set up, and we have councillors and officers. No, we don't have any councillors on the work streams, do we? It's just officers. Officers on the work streams, and Kerry can explain about those in a moment. It's the work streams that bring all the councils together, so we're all operating a similar system when a vesting day happens, and we have got the best officers in the place due to their skill set. So Kerry can tell you who those officers are and what their work streams are. I think, Phil, you're leading comms, aren't you? There you go. Risks being managed through the LGR programme. We have a corporate risk register, which is logging the risks. The next phase after discovery is the design phase, and that will be starting in autumn 2026, leading up to implementation. And I just want to say that Chris Bally will be doing a briefing about LGR before the next full council meeting on the 22nd of July. He has been, as you will all know, because you've been to them, doing periodic briefings, so to try and keep everybody up to speed, because I do appreciate that this has been quite focused by just a few number of councillors from across Suffolk, and a lot of members might feel they haven't had as much input as they could have had. But the timeframes have been so tight to get things happening that it's been difficult to try and keep everybody up to date. But I hope the LGR work group that meets frequently does feel like they've had their voice heard and they have been part of the process. I'm happy to take any questions unless Kerry wants to come in at this point, or Sandra. Is that okay, Chair?
That might be worth Kerry or Sandra giving an overview, particularly discovery, making sure people understand that first and touching on design before we go to implementation. It'd be a good idea.
Yes, happy to give an overview, and maybe Sandra can talk about the work of the project management office. So there are around 30 work streams that have been set up. They're officer led, and they're made up from people across the system, so officers across the system. East Suffolk Council officers lead some of those work streams. For example, Michelle Burdett leads one of the economic development and regen work streams. Sandra leads, as well as helping coordinate the PMO, the Project Management Office. It also leads, I think, the data and IT systems work stream. Phil on comms, and a large number of other officers are involved in those work streams. The objective of them is to be able to focus on individual areas. I haven't included a comprehensive list, but you'll see some examples. So there's a work stream on waste and recycling, one on parks, open spaces and cemeteries, one on procurement and contracts, and so on. The initial objective in the discovery phase is to really capture the world as it is. So for it to take waste and recycling, where are the depots? How many vehicles are there? How many staff? How much is spent each year? What tonnages are collected? Are there any contracts in place? Are services delivered directly by a local authority, or is it contracted out? If so, how long does that contract have left to run? So it's a capturing of all of that information, and of course the county element of that as well. So county will have disposal contracts, will have capital investments. All of that is being captured, but on kind of information stores, spreadsheets, and fed into the project management office. The design stage starts to ask the question, what is the best way to create a new system based on all of the data, all of the information that is provided at the discovery stage. Those work streams, the makeup of them, and even some of the work streams themselves might need to change at that point. So they're not set in stone, and maybe Sandra will say a bit more about that. But for the moment, these are the work streams. The work streams themselves group into 7 themes, which are listed there on item 3.10. And so the themes bring together individual work streams, and each of the themes are sponsored by one of the chief executives who's part of the implementation board. The idea of them, I'll finish on this, the idea of the work streams is that they're very focused on particular areas and can provide the detail that is needed in order to create the new systems. And Sandra, I don't know if you want to say a bit more about the role of the PMO.
Yes, thanks, Kerry. So just to make a slight distinction as well between, we do have actually an East Suffolk programme for LGR, which focuses on what does East Suffolk need to do for this period, so until the end of its time, until the 31st of March 2028. So there is a local plan focusing on how we are supporting staff, how we are as a CLT team preparing, the point that was spoken about earlier, including, you know, how are we preparing and supporting members, making sure that our data is ready, making sure that from a finance and governance perspective, East Suffolk Council is in the right place and doing what we need to do for this period, and obviously our own communications to staff. So there is a sort of separate programme plan that is in existence for East Suffolk Council as a entity. And then, as Kerry was explaining, there is then the Suffolk-wide LGR programme and plan, which I'm sitting on that PMO office for as well. And the programme management office for that is made up of, again, people from across representing all of the councils in Suffolk. There is an interim programme director in place at the moment from one of the other councils, and I'm supporting her in her role to ensure that we have a robust programme in place for the discovery phase. And they are recruiting to a programme director currently as we speak. So that advert has closed now for a programme director to replace that sort of interim arrangement. And I'm hopeful that they'll be appointed soon. But in the meantime, we are putting in place a robust plan Suffolk-wide, as well as locally a plan for East Suffolk to deal with what we need to do locally for our staff as well. So I think Kerry's probably outlined the work streams, unless you need any more detail on that. The actual programme plan is about that discovery phase, but also those overarching pieces of work from a Suffolk-wide perspective that we need to do, that the implementation board need to have a handle on, which are things like being able to contribute to that the change order, and understanding those transitional governance arrangements, and other early scoping pieces of work that are coming to the implementation board to just make sure that we're on the right foot to understand what needs to be done between now and the 31st of March 2028. So yes, that Suffolk wide programme plan is in a good position, and then locally we have what we're doing here for East Suffolk. But I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Sandra. Carol?
Yeah, could I just, before we go on to questions, could I just say that I did ask Lorraine Rogers, this is not my portfolio, this is obviously section 151 finance, but part of the reason the government is doing this is because they want to save money. So if you don't mind, through the chair, could I just read a statement that Lorraine wrote for me? So she's saying, I'm pleased to report that council is forecasting a 1.7 million surplus for 2025-26, which means we are in a position to put 1.7 million into reserves compared to the 5.3 million use of reserves originally planned. This improvement is largely due to one-off items and outturn will be reported to Cabinet next month, but it does strengthen our financial resilience. We plan to increase the general fund balance by 2 million to 8 million in 2026-27, as presented in the February budget report to full council. Looking ahead, we have a balanced budget for the current year, but remain mindful of the budget gap emerging in 2027-28, which is 12.3 million. And I know officers have already started looking at solutions. Budget planning will begin next month through portfolio budget meetings with heads of service and finance. We will need to address transition costs linked to local government reorganisation. Options include the use of reserves and capital receipts, and we continue to press government to reconsider elements of the finance settlement to support councils at this critical time. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. What I should have added that really this scrutiny is not about the boundaries. This is about how we deliver as a council, we deliver the transition from where we are to where we want to be. So if anybody has questions on boundaries, can I suggest that's for another day? That isn't necessarily for here. Question there? Right. Nearly everyone, right? Start with Steve and we'll cut across. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it does seem to be, as you said, Councillor Topping, happening sort of breakneck speed. Are there examples of this, sort of time frame in the other councils that have become unitaries, or is this a result of it happening through the sort of fast track devolution programme?
Cumbria had the same time frame that we're going through. Suffolk County Council obviously chose, as did Norfolk, to go on to the fast track devolution programme, which is why it's happening all so quickly, although it has slightly slowed down. It's been challenging. Everybody's like rushing to keep up, but Cumbria have done it all, and I have had several conversations and been in the room with the leader of the unitary, who was a leader of one of the districts, and he did some training with us and came into the room electronically. He wasn't very well at the time. Something that really came through and comes through very strongly every time I do any LGA training with the other unitaries is councillor resilience. It's not easy. The government are expecting us to make savings, and I'm being told those savings probably won't even be realised in the first 5 years. So it's a long process. Vesting day will be day one, but it's not all over on day one. These councils that are ahead of us are still having significant challenges, both financially. I believe 400, Sandra's question, 400 work streams, digital, what's the word I'm looking for?
Systems.
Thank you. Digital systems, 400 digital systems.
There's more actually than that, Caroline. So each
Oh, Sandra, you're frozen. Yeah, well, Cumbria had 400 work streams that they had to align, and they're still lining them up. And they were actually saying, I didn't really want to talk about waste. They were saying that they're still trying to get their waste lined up across all the councils that have moved into those unitaries, because it hasn't lined up yet. So this is going to be a long ongoing process.
Because there are lots of people who want to ask questions, can you please go to one question at a time? We always come back to you. I'm going to cut across the room. Ruth?
Thank you very much. My question has two parts, but they're closely related. If the Suffolk County Council's administration's application for judicial review is upheld, is there a risk that the structural change order expected to go before Parliament in only 5 months' time could be delayed or even derailed? And based on that, is there anything that can be done to address that possibility and support the resilience of the 3 unitary system that our residents have supported? Thank you.
So the letter that Suffolk County Council had put into the government to try and judicially review them about their process, no judicial review against LGR has actually ever been upheld. So that's quite telling. And the leaders who have been putting this together with the officers since January have been doing an incredibly diligent task and making sure every I has been dotted and every T has been crossed. So it's the government process. And I think the only thing that they're really challenging on is the 500,000. Which is what the government were originally benchmarking as number of residents per unitary. And we know that with the 3 unitary option, we are below the 500,000 residents. But apart from that, we don't think that the challenge is acceptable. Can you?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of process for judicial review, there are various stages. We're at the very first stage, a letter before action has been served on the government, as Councillor Topping was explaining. Then it would be the County Council has 3 months from the date of the decision that they're challenging to issue a claim. And that would be a claim for, they would need permission to bring the judicial review from the High Court, the Administrative Court in London. And then if that was, that's determined initially on the papers, and then there's an appeal process around that. And then only if the court agrees to a full hearing, would there be a full judicial review hearing in due course. So there are kind of a number of hurdles that would have to be got over before the matter was considered. There was a full hearing of the judicial review. In the meantime, processes will just continue unless and until the courts quash the decision of the government and ask them to retake it. If that's the ultimate outcome that could happen if the judicial review went all the way and the government upheld the decision. But only a very small number of judicial review challenges are successful. And as Caroline said, on LGR decisions to date, there have been none that have been. So, thank you.
I suppose we shouldn't just rely on the fact that there have been no successful ones, but we hope that that continues. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Leader and officers. Can I just ask about the finances? Forgive me if I'm supposed to know this already, or indeed if you don't know this, the answer to this, but it's about allowances. So if there are elections to the Shadow Authority next May, we're expecting this, short of any, change in direction from the government as has just been identified. Is it theoretically possible, and I don't mean this question to sound acquisitive, it's really about cost, but is it theoretically possible that somebody could be drawing an allowance for county and drawing an allowance for district, outgoing district, and drawing an allowance for the Shadow Authority, and then related to that, really, who pays? So the issue there is that if we've got the Shadow Authority and they don't yet have a budget for this, then it's almost where's the money coming from for the allowances for these councillors that may or may not be the existing ones. And that's going to be a fantastic hit if there might be 70, there might be 60 of them or 70 of them, and they might all be drawing somewhere as an average of, you know, 12,000 each or something similar. Where's the money coming from for all of that? Thanks.
So you are correct. Next year there will be elections for the unitary councillors. This council will still be in operation for an extra year, and the councillors currently on this council will still be in post getting paid their allowance from this council. Suffolk County councillors will also be employed by they're not employed. Their allowances will be paid by Suffolk County Council. The unitary councillors will also be getting an allowance, and that will be coming from the transition costs the government put forward to pay the unitary councillors. So technically, you could be a district councillor, a county councillor, and a unitary councillor getting paid those allowances.
Lovely, thank you.
Which is shocking, yeah, shocking cost implications for that year, aren't there? It's just for the benefit of anybody listening, when we had the local government reorganisation, very local at district level, and we invoked effectively, we gave birth to Lowestoft Town Council, didn't we? And then we back charged them when they'd come into being for services that had we'd attached costs to invoke them. But obviously that this can't happen in reverse, because we can't be refunded if we no longer exist as a council after that, can we?
You've also got to remember the unitary councillors might not be existing councillors.
No, indeed.
So whilst the district councillors are being paid their allowance by their districts and the county councillors are being paid their allowance by the county, the unitary councillors may not be in either of those councils and may be fresh councillors who would then expect to receive an allowance because the general public have elected them to represent them as the new unitary councils, but their job isn't going to be that large because they won't be able to interfere in the business of this council, nor will they be able to interfere in the business of the county council. But they will be setting up like monitoring officer, chief exec. Kerry, do you want to go through what the board, Chris?
The statutory. So, thank you, Chair. So it'll be prescribed in the structural change order, the functions of the shadow authority, and as the leader explained, it will involve appointing the 3 statutory officers, chief executive, monitoring officer, and chief finance officer, setting the members' remuneration scheme, code of conduct, constitution. Those types of high-level decisions would be those that the shadow authority are tasked with initially.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you very much. Can we go back to your statement about the financial changes? It really does worry me. Less than 4 months ago, between scrutiny and audit, both saw the proposed budget, the plan for the next year and everything, and it was saying substantial losses. Now, 2 months into the year, we've gone from a substantial loss to a profit. It makes me feel like we were either misled or there is something really wrong, because scrutiny and audit both put a lot of questions into those accounts and a lot of time and effort to suddenly find that it sounds like what we were seeing was gobbledygook.
So this is not my portfolio, and I only asked Lorraine to give me that statement because I knew that this money had been saved, and I thought it would reassure you. There have been some small windfalls insofar as interest rates have remained high, and so we've been getting interest. No, there have been some projects that haven't come to fruition that are slightly behind that will come through next year. Lorraine has gone through the list with me, but I don't retain that much information, and I didn't ask Lorraine for that much information, but I can find it for you, Chair, and I can let the committee.
That'd be worth having, but I think, to be fair, that's not directly related to this. It was a statement made, you're absolutely right, and the leader will give us more detail in the response. to that. But I know you're probably trying to help, but it, as ever, raises more questions than answers. I've got you also, Councillor Cawley.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Topping, thank you for that. I fully appreciate that this is a huge mammoth of a task over this period of time. And as you've spoken to other parts of the country, and I remember we spoke to one in Yorkshire who said they didn't save any money and they were stressed. In fact, he looked very stressed. So I personally feel that this time frame, what happens if this starts to slip? And then, you know, your work streams and your staff and everybody else is under so much pressure that they start to make rash decisions and not informed decisions, because that's when we start to have the issue. So what sort of plan B, should I say, is there, or to try and alleviate the issue of this slipping, this time frame, you know, to go in if it runs over? I suppose that's one. It's an open question. It's a huge one, and I don't really expect an answer. And projects that we've got that are going to transition through all of this, the ones that are not ring fenced with budgets, what will happen to them? Because we have seen projects where it's stopped, the money's been stopped, and then that project goes to hell, and it seems to have been a waste of money on sometimes. So what projects have we got in the pipeline and in the list that could be ring fenced if they're not?
That is two questions.
Sorry, yeah. I've got a million, but it's such a project.
Got to keep it in check, so you've had to.
Absolutely right. Yeah, apologies. That's it from.
Chair, if that's okay, Kerry's going to take that. Is that right?
On the point about projects being ring fenced, clearly there are a set of objectives set out by the administration in our direction, which there's an expectation of delivery. So we have done some work looking at ensuring that's a priority. I think one of the challenges with LGR, one of many, is the resource that it will take. And I'm sure it will be something that the committee comes back to in conversations with cabinet members through the portfolio holders through the rest of the year. What's the impact of LGR and the work on the business as usual and the priorities? There are some capital projects where, in the context of LGR, it would make sense to pause. And I can give an example. There was a project in the capital programme for some time to move to a new housing operations depot. There was about 2.5 million in the capital programme to an adjacent site near the current site in Lowestoft. If you don't know what the shape of the housing operation is going to be in the new unitary, the staff, and you haven't got that detail, to invest £2.5 million in a depot in Lowestoft probably doesn't make a lot of sense. However, some work can be done, scoping what the requirement is, working out what the space needed is. So the kind of preparatory work can be done, and there are a few examples of that. So we have gone through the whole capital programme, and I think, I'm sure kind of during the budget process, can go into that in some more detail and identify a few projects where it makes sense to pause or to get it to a particular point. For example, secure a site, obtain planning permission on a site, decontaminate a site, and then the decision on future investments will sit with the future unitaries. Although I would say they're in the minority, those projects that will not continue as planned during the term of the administration.
And the projects that we've got ring fenced that the money is there for and we're getting on with, they won't be stopped. The new unitary will have to see those projects through. If they're nearly at completion, they won't just be able to stop them, because they'll be like, the money will be there and they'll be ready to go. And your question on slippage, there can't be any slippage. The officers are all working really hard, you know, because this has got to happen at the time, in the time frames the government have given us to deal with this. And so, yeah, they're all working really hard. They're doing their normal job, trying to keep everything going here, as are all the officers across the whole of Suffolk, and doing this extra work stream as well.
Can I just come in, and then it's going to be Sarah and Mike, and I know there's further questions. Based on what Councillor Cawley said and what you've just said, there's a huge amount of pressure on officers and the work streams. So who scrutinises? Where are the checks and balances on the work that you're doing to make sure that it's right, you're happy, or the committee's happy with what you are or they are delivering. It seems everything's fast. Who's making sure everybody's happy with the decisions that are being made?
Well, the officers are obviously doing all the work, and then it comes back to the members to actually scrutinise that and shape it and make sure that what is being delivered by the officers is what the members are actually wanting. But these people are professionals. They've been doing this for years. This is a slightly different work stream that they haven't done this before, although I've got to say some of the Suffolk Coastal Waveney officers have been through this before, because we joined, is it 7 years ago now? And so they have experience of having to run 2 councils and then have a shadow council going on in the background. But yeah, they are under a lot of pressure, and I am worried about everybody's mental health, physical health, and everything else, if I'm perfectly honest, because, you know, they're trying to do their jobs, which is what they're here to do, and they've got this extra stuff going on, and it never stops with the government putting up housing targets, putting extra pressure on our planning authority, and obviously Suffolk Waste Partnership and simpler recycling and all the challenges that's producing. And please don't give me any questions, because that's not on the agenda about bins. But yeah, it is challenging. But I've got to say, we are all in this because we want to represent our communities and we want to do the best for our communities, and we really truly believe that this is the best place to do it. And the officers are as dedicated to their communities as we are, and so they'll do their best.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Kerry, you want to come in again?
Just to add to that, in terms of the democratic oversight of each stage of the process, the joint committees have the democratic oversight of the work that's being undertaken now. The shadow authority is the democratic oversight of the work that takes place in the future. A shadow committee can set up its own scrutiny committee and some shadow authority. So the shadow authorities can set up their own scrutiny function. And the scrutiny function here can scrutinise the impact that this is having on the work of East Suffolk Council and the administration's strategic plan. So those are the points of.
That's useful. It was no criticism of the officers, but I think in some respects supporting officers, because if you just said conscious of how busy they are, their mental health, that's when mistakes can happen, isn't it? And that's when under pressure people make decisions that haven't properly been scrutinised. So no criticism at all. Councillor Plummer, then Councillor Nimney, then we'll go round to the others. Lovely, that's been answered. One question, Councillor Nimney, I know what you're like.
Yeah, just one quick clarification. Whilst the one of the councils involved in the reorganisation is looking to go to judicial review, do they have the obligations, I think, exist between all councils, a duty to cooperate? Is that a requirement going forward? In that it strikes me that if you're looking from the districts and the county to all the tasks, particularly social care and education, etc., you do need cooperation between all levels of the current government.
The county council have been cooperating. The officers have been cooperating. The work is still going on in tandem with the judicial review. So if the judicial review is upheld, the work is still done. And if the judicial review falls, the work is still there. It's rather like us having elections, were they on, were they off, but our election team were still ready to go, because if they're suddenly on and we're not ready, then we're not ready and it's not happening. But everything is happening. It's being twin tracked. So regardless of the outcome, the work will have been done.
Thank you for that clarification. The
Thank
question
you.
I wanted to ask.
There are other questions. Like we did say one, didn't we? So I can come back to you.
Yeah.
Can you take your mic off, please? Councillor Molyneux, you had another question?
Yep. Well, going back to the other councils that have been through this, and I do remember that presentation and the chap from Cumbria. We are using using the same consultancy. Is it Truman Change? And I was wondering if there was any sort of particular area of risk or something that sort of jumped out, from their experience working with Cumbria, that we could try and circumnavigate and sort of get around because of these ideas of it's slippage and going over and costs. And in terms of costs, has there been any kind of indication of extra capacity going to parishes and towns in terms of picking up the slack?
Yes, Truman Change are a organisational kind of change firm. It's led by somebody called Lucy Truman, who's a organisational psychologist, and we've employed them and other. So they've worked in Ipswich, they've worked in Baber and Mid Suffolk. They're currently working with some of the Surrey authorities. They work in Cumbria and continue to work in Cumbria, and they work on particularly kind of how, as managers in organisations, and we've identified, there's around 270 people in that category, somebody who manages a team, even if it's small, how do they deal with change and uncertainty? One of the big questions that staff have is, what does this mean for me? And we're not in a position to answer that. And there's 2 years to go, where we need to make sure that people are focused and supported. So that's the focus for us of the work with Truman Change. The risk is that people are in a state of anxiety, they might disengage. Certainly some of the other authorities saw that staff turnover increased because people just wanted some certainty, so they left. So those are all the kind of operational risks. We've intended, by working with the Wellbeing Staff Group, Truman Change, and a large management group, and we did a session with them on the leadership forum, and we've had the first 5 sessions with Truman Change. We're hoping to kind of steady the ship, give people the information that we have, and also coach our managers to lead people through uncertainty.
Councillor Brooks is in much better health than he was when he did the training session with us. I've seen him twice since then physically, and he's in much better health. Town and parish councils, we've had conversations. We have town council conferences annually, and we've had conversations with town and parish councils about assets that they might be interested in taking over. Obviously, there will be a point where we need to freeze anything, because that does in itself create a huge amount of work for the officers. And as we've already said, the officers are under a huge amount of pressure already, doing business as usual and all the LGR stuff. So we have had town and parish councils express interest about some assets. For example, Halesworth have taken some assets on, and Woodbridge have been talking to us about taking some assets on. But if people want to come and speak to us, the offer is there. But we at some point will have to sort of park it as we're coming up to the LGR changeover point, because the officers need to concentrate on what they're doing. So does that help with the town?
Can we come? Yeah. Councillor Leach.
Thank you very much. Last week, a number of us attended the LGA webinar on being a unitary councillor. And one of the points that I took away from that was all of the speakers said that we should consider the new council as something completely different. It's not county and it's not district. Now, at County Council, I was on a committee that we spent a year preparing for the new intake of councillors. Right down to what folders they would be getting, laptops, and was based on feedback from existing councillors. Are we doing anything to prepare our shadow councillors for that transition in terms of training and just preparation? Thank you.
We are actually, because we have a members development steering group, we actually devise training for East Suffolk councillors. And you're all part of that because you get invited to those training sessions. And we have been engaging through Sarah Davies, who looks after our work stream, the training that we can offer East Suffolk councillors to prepare us if we want to stand as unitary councillors, so that we have some understanding of what we are walking into. And we've also, from the training that we did last week, there was 3 unitary councillors who had explained how they had transitioned from district councillors into the unitary, and how challenging it had been. A particular lady from Cumbria, as it so happens, said that she had been in a bit of a wilderness really, because she wasn't sure what the expectation of her was whilst she was in a shadow position, but she was still trying to do her district council functions at the same time, and it was a little bit of a strange transition for her. We don't know who is going to be elected next year. As I said earlier, it could be somebody that's had no previous council experience whatsoever. We can't train those people because we don't know who they're going to be. Councils and political parties can advocate and put out there, we are interested in gathering new members, and put on training themselves and try and encourage people in. And we have, as districts, done how to be councillor events previously anyway, to encourage new people in. But we can't train fictitious, if you like, bodies who haven't even stood yet, because we don't know who's going to get elected in, so we can't train anybody.
I would just add that the work to make sure that when the shadow comes into existence, everybody has a laptop and a building and a pass. All of that is part of one of the work streams. Likewise, there was discussion earlier about transitional funding. There are decisions to be taken from existing districts and county about how interim arrangements are funded. That's part of one of the work streams. So all of these questions exist within the project.
But I'd also like to say that in that year of being a shadow councillor, I am hoping that those councillors will be getting training, because they will have the transition funding to be able to be trained up. But I'm also hoping that for councillors that choose not to be unitary councillors, will still be in post for a year, and we will be able to offer them support and peer support, because at our last members, no, it might have been it was after the LGA training we suggested that it would be really interesting to have maybe some of the old, they don't know this yet because we haven't asked them, Suffolk County Council portfolio holders maybe come and speak to us about what it means. For example, James Reader, what it means to be the portfolio holder for children's services at Suffolk County Council. Maybe James Reader would like to come in and have that conversation with people that want to stand for unitary councillor, and likewise Paul West and others. But that's not a piece of work we actually progressed yet, because we only discussed it last week. But it's a thought, because there's a lot of experience out there.
One of the thoughts we also had, and I'll come to the people, was that do we, as a East Suffolk Council at the moment, using the different leaders of the different parties, do some form of PR saying, before you become a councillor, these are the things you need to consider. Now, the obvious one is that Reform have attracted lots and lots of people who probably didn't really understand what they were going to be elected for. Not just Reform, it can be others. We need to be careful on that, but actually making sure that people who do want to become councillors fully understand the demands they're going to face. But that's something that's in discussion, and there's no right or wrong answer to that. So I've got Councillor Lynch. Did you want another one? Question? And Louise, right, I'm conscious of time, so if we can make them relatively quick, I want to get you all in.
Currently, Suffolk has got a call for land, because obviously the new, we're starting to look at the new level of housing needs. However, East Suffolk won't exist very shortly, and the call for land is certainly in my local area, because I'm aware of farmland being bought in Kesgrave, Martlesham, Woodbridge, all along the A12 corridor, ready to build houses on, and yet it might end up that whole area is going to be overloaded with houses, because when the new boundaries come in, why are we doing a call for land when we don't even know what the housing needs for the new 3 areas are? Otherwise, we're just going to create chaos. We're not going to be able to complete the process we've started. So why are we doing it?
Is that all right, Chair? We're doing it because we don't have a 5-year land supply anymore, because the government put our housing targets up 2 years ago now, is it? Or was it last year? By 80%, and we don't have enough land. So developers can now come in and speculatively apply for building wherever, and it's really difficult for us to challenge that. All the councils in Suffolk have gone to develop their local plan right now, even the ones that don't need to. so that we can all align our local plans. So when moving forward, all our local plans will start at the same time because they're all lining themselves up as part. It's probably part of one of the work streams, but I know all the councils in Suffolk are doing it, and we're all moving at the same time because we all know that we're going to be 3 unitaries and we need to line those up. Regards housing need, we obviously get the data through Suffolk Observatory and other methods to find out what the housing need is. But yeah, our local plan is out of date, so we've got to do it. And you're right, it's not going to be adopted until 2029. But we've got to do it because we can't not do it because there's a statutory obligation on us to have a local plan. And if we haven't got a 5-year land supply, we're very vulnerable.
And I suspect if you're a speculative purchaser of land to buy land for housing, they don't care whether we're LGR or whatever, do they? I think that's the problem I don't know, it's a problem we face. No. Put your mic on, please. Jeff, put your mic on so people can.
I just do not understand why we're doing something that we won't be around in 2029. So therefore we can't sign it off. So therefore it's never going to exist. The work we're doing is a waste of money and time and effort.
So Ben Warner he's head of planning. He can give you a full timeline of how this is going to work, but we can't not do it because our local plan has expired and we don't have a 5-year land supply. So we've got to do it. Even though we will not complete it, it will be a piece of work which the new council will have to take up. But Ben Warner can give you a more cohesive answer.
We'll get Ben to give us an answer for that. With just a little briefing note. Now I'm conscious of time as well. Louise, you put your hand up, and Rob. Louise and Rob, and then Mike, and Stephen's not sure.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question in terms of liaising with other organisations, etc., that we've established, both inside and outside the council. So things like the Youth Council and the Community Partnership bodies, and also, for example, the place boards as well, Felixstowe and Lowestoft. Will they remain entirely within our outgoing district, or will we possibly pass some of those connections over? Or thanks. How will it work?
We cannot impose anything on the new unitary council because it will be its own sovereign body when it's formed. We obviously will keep all the things that we're doing now, like the Youth Council, community partnerships, everything, Members Development Steering Group, all those things that we really cherish and value and are doing a really good job with. We can put them forward to the unitary council as good practice and hope they adopt them. For example, we had a motion at full council regards the Youth Council, and I said, and Councillor Jepson might have seconded me, I can't remember who seconded me, it might have been Councillor Byatt, we would champion the Youth Council going forward to the Unitary Council. And I'm hoping there's unitary councillors going forward in this room, and we would champion and drag that through from that side if necessary. But we have a list of things that we think we do really well, as have all the other districts. And I'm sure county have got lists of things that they do really well, which we would like the unitaries to adopt, but we can't make them adopt them. We can only advise them and try and encourage them.
Lovely, thank you. Rob?
Could I just add to that, if that's okay?
Of course you can, yep.
Sorry for coming. I am here. It's just an apologies for falling out of the call earlier. That is also what's happening as part of this discovery work, just to add to what Caroline has said. So everything that we currently do in East Suffolk is being surfaced as part of that discovery work that we're now in. So that is the point of the discovery work, is that we can understand how things currently operate in all of the existing councils. So things like the Youth Council will be surfaced in the work stream that's looking at those processes, and place boards, all of that will come out of those work streams, so that we understand what the landscape of Suffolk looks like. That will be fed in.
Lovely, thank you, Sandra. Rob, oh yes, sorry, yes, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add that at Member Development Steering Group last week, it was discussed that we would be looking to have a ESC legacy workshop that all councillors will be invited to. where it will be an opportunity for councillors to reflect on all the achievements of East Suffolk Council and what the things such as the Youth Council, community partnerships, etc. that Caroline Councillor Topping has outlined, that they would like to see continue with the new authorities, and they can be put forward as recommendations from this council. It will also be an opportunity for councillors to discuss how they would like to mark the end of East Suffolk Council as well. So that workshop has been provisionally listed for the 1st of October. I think that's right, Sarah, and we'll be notifying all members of that shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In fact, I was chair of the patient participation group for Suffolk and North East Essex Health Authority, which is now Suffolk and Norfolk, and they ran a programme of, look, what have we done well, what can we celebrate, and what's our legacy, and how do we convey that into the next, which I thought was really useful. So I have a contact if we need anyone who can help steer us that way. Rob.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to make sure that I don't get misunderstood or taken in the wrong context about being a scrutiny on this committee. You know, I've sort of 30 years in government, and I've been through a lot of regeneration projects or reorganisation ones. I think I even applied for my own job 4 times in 6 years. So been there, done that. And I just see myself as somebody who is here to support the council. If that even means in that support looking at avoiding pitfalls that might not sound, you know, come across as well, but that's purely what it's there for, 100% to support on what we're doing it because we're all in it together. So my sort of question would be is that looking at this, and I think we'll both agree on this, is that the time frame for this is unrealistic, completely. And has there any pushback been given, or could it be given back to central government to say, look, I think you're setting us up to fail. We need more time. I mean, if they turn around and said to you, you've got another year, I think you'd all have a sigh of relief. That's just that question. Thank you.
I think that's a recommendation, Chair.
Mike, did you have another question?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to put my first one, if I may. I asked for clarification last time. One of the things that I didn't hear on your list of things that perhaps we've done well is the Marmot place. We should undoubtedly include that. But I've gone through your themes and work streams. At what point do we put up the assets of each part that will be separated from the existing to join another? I mean, if we look at Ipswich and South Suffolk, it's going to be having bits of ourselves, Mid Suffolk, Labour. Are there assets that are joint across the geographical area? Who will be doing that? Is that a part of any of the work streams that you've identified in 310 and 311? Thank you.
Yeah, and apologies for not including a complete list of all of the work streams, but I mean, there are a number. There's a property work stream that sits under place. Under neighbourhood operations, there's a parks, open spaces and cemeteries work stream. There are other, there's a capital projects work stream as well. So all of those are currently in the process of collating all of the asset registers across county and districts. The work streams will put forward recommendations at the design stage for how those assets could better work together. An example, if I can, was as part of the highways work stream. How can you maximize highways and street cleansing? How can you maximize the benefits of a large highways contract, but have a highways and street cleansing service that is more local and locally responsive? Those are the sorts of questions that are coming out now. Yeah.
Sorry, was that?
Yeah, Kerry's got a slide here. I've just asked him if he can share it with the committee at later after the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we've evolved now. Yeah, just sort of leading on from Councillor Cooley's recommendation, potential recommendation for an extension of time, an extra year. Could there also be an option if the time wasn't given, if there was more resources given, for what I'm imagining almost like a crack team of professionals coming in to help and bolster and sort of support our officers through what we're hearing could be incredibly or will be incredibly challenging time. And on a parallel, just when I was talking about the capacity going to parishes and towns, I was also thinking about capacity in terms of financial, if there been any sort of like mention of that in any of the meetings you guys have been in.
Well, obviously, if assets are going over to town and parish councils, then they need to be sustainable. So they'll need some financial support to make sure those assets work, because otherwise we're going to end up with parish councils that are going to be going under. I don't know if parish council can have a section 141, is it?
No.
But that'd be a very unhappy place if we if all our parish councils were going under. I think that the first part of your question was actually also a recommendation, Chair, which was about adding extra resources from government for a crack team. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to debate, but just before we go to debate, I think it's useful to understand from our perspective is where can Scrutiny scrutinise you in this whole process? We can't scrutinise everything because we're busy as it is, but where do you view Scrutiny in specifically the work streams or the work that's happening under LGR?
Well, I guess my question to you is, do you feel like that the members in general are being kept up to speed? I did say that Chris Bally is going to do a brief presentation before full council on the 22nd of July. He hasn't done one recently. He has done them previously. But is there anything more that we can be doing to help you so that you feel like you're being brought along the journey? We do have the LGR work group, which is quite small, but it is cross-party. And I guess the group leaders or the members of that work group could maybe cascade more information out to the rest of the members if you feel like you're not getting enough information. But it is very fast moving. There is a lot going on. And I'm not sure how Scrutiny can help me. I'm open to suggestions. If you think that there's more that you can offer, Kerry, are you itching to say something?
Well, just there've been discussions with the chair of the Scrutiny Committee, and I mean there's a distinction probably to be drawn between the role of scrutiny and the kind of remit of scrutiny as it's currently incarnated at East Suffolk Council is to scrutinise East Suffolk Council business, East Suffolk Council finances, and anything else you want to look at. So some of this stuff is not about East Suffolk Council. It's about a future unitary that doesn't exist. In the discussions with the chair, we felt the point of overlap is anything happening with all of this that we've been talking about that is going to impact, and some of the questions earlier were, are projects going to be stopped because of LGR? So, you know, to the extent that some of this stuff, either staff resources or financial resources, is having an impact on East Suffolk Council operations or business or priorities, that is the point that should be scrutinised by the committee, I think was the conversation.
I think the fact that Mike Deacon's been consulted and is aware of that, because I think it's important that, you know, you have a good, nobody disputes we are not a good scrutiny panel. So I think with the skills and experience we have here, some external to their council work could be of benefit in assisting you or providing you with some comfort if needed, where there may be some challenges. And you may actually want to say, we're not happy about where this is going, and I get your point, Kerry. So it's something I just want to debate. We've got a few minutes to debate. Is there anybody who would like to debate on this? Thank you, Jeff.
I think we've got to really keep our focus on East Suffolk Council until there is a shadow authority or anything like that. This is where our residents get affected, and I think we've just got to switch off about what's happening on LGR as a scrutiny committee for the next 12 months. We've got an agenda, we've got things to work out, and just focus on East Suffolk. If we want to change that at the end of when we start looking at 2027, what we're doing, maybe then we come back to it. But for the next 12 months or for the remainder of this financial year, let's just focus on East Suffolk and forget about LGR, because it's our residents that are affected today, not tomorrow.
I think that could be affected by tomorrow, but Mike Nimney?
I'm afraid I don't really agree with that. I feel that we as a scrutiny committee need to be at least updated at each of our meetings as to where these themes and work streams are actually heading and how they're going to impact on us. But I think we certainly do need to suggest, in view of the timescale that our officers are expected to meet this reorganisation, bearing in mind that they're still leading their departments and doing their own work, that certainly more resources need to be made available from Westminster, or as has been suggested, an extension of time. I think that's a really key thing that we as a scrutiny committee should be making.
That's certainly one of the recommendations as well, so we can take that. Anything else from anyone? I think, Rob?
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud that as a scrutiny committee, I think it's important that we continue to follow the money, but also the transition of projects from the LGR that come over. We want to make sure that there is a smooth transition of those that affect all our residents and East Suffolk, to make sure we don't fall off the cliff with some of those. So there is a link that we still need to keep an eye on, but maybe not a deep scrutiny, but there is other areas that we still need to have the right information, you know, no missing information. I mean, there was, if we talk about the budgets, the projects that were on there before of about 8 million, I think it was, were projects that were held or delayed, but there was no information about them. You know, were they very important projects or anything else? So it's that in the detail, the devil's in the detail with those sorts of things. So it's just making sure that that type of information is accessible. Thank you.
And we've got Mike Deacon is going to be liaising as well with yourselves, so we can make sure any of those points are picked up, and we can go back to Mike with that. Thank you, everybody. Lorraine, thank you. Sorry, Sandra, being online. Thank you for the report, Lorraine, that caused a bit of growth. Thank you for everybody who's been here, who is going to be going. Can I suggest recommendations? Sarah, are we happy? You've recorded a few.
Thank you, Chair. I will construct something, obviously send it round for approval at a late date, but something around asking, and I'm guessing I'll ask the monitoring officer here, it would be a recommendation to Cabinet or the programme board, but we normally have to go via Cabinet, to ask government for additional resources for the transition, or an extension of time. And then I know Kerry has already sent me the slide, so that would have been a recommendation that we talked about work streams. And then something on the finance, just to get clarity on what Councillor Topping read out earlier, and also from Ben Waldner, just some information on the reasons why we're doing the local plan call for sites. That's all what I've got at the moment.
That sounds very accurate. I think also we just need to pause on the either the resources or the funding, because we need to understand what that resource or that funding might be. So we could say we need more money, but they say, what do you want it for? It'd be handy to have a little bit of a, not deep case, but an understanding of the type of resource we may want, for instance. Not in great detail, but it'd be handy if we knew what we were asking for. Is that okay? Okay. Very quickly, Sarah.
Just very quickly on the clarification that the whole of the local plan, not just the call for sites, I think is what we're asking Ben about. You know, it's all wrapped up together, but I think the whole thing.
Lovely, thank you, Sarah. Right, the time is 7:44. We're not too bad, so we are going to have a 10-minute comfort break. Do we need to just hold ourselves until Agnes says we're clear to move? But thank you, everybody who's been here, and we'll scrutinise you after the comfort break. Could I have a proposer for those recommendations? Councillor Lynch and Councillor Montague, second. All those in favour? Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're live.
Thank you. Welcome back. Let me just get, I think I didn't have a hard copy on one of my pages. So the next section is to question the leader on her portfolio, which, as you will see from the lists of reams and reams of lists that she's got, there's rather a few. And a lot of them don't have a lot of detail on them, but that's no criticism of you. There's a hell of a lot that you manage. So I'm just wondering, would it be, until we get to questions, would you like to give a briefing on the areas that you think are of key concern, highlights you've got to, and then we can open it to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we wasn't quite sure which piece of the portfolio you were particularly interested in. As you can see from the lists that the Chair mentioned, there was quite a lot, and we could have spent a lot of officer time putting a lot of background in here, and it has been of no interest to you whatsoever. And having just had the discussion about how pressed the officers are, I didn't want to waste their time putting huge amounts of information together you're not interested in. However, I've got an ask of you, because as we started this conversation, it was what you can do to assist the council in your role as scrutiny and shine lights on maybe blind spots that I might have. And I'm just picked two areas out of the portfolio, one being Thriving Places, which is an initiative that's only recently been launched in May. The grant forms are out there now. People are able to access them. It's about locally placed areas. It's about legacy. It's about seed funding in order for our communities to be able to do things that we can assist with seed funding. It's not in Ipswich or Lowestoft because they already get a lot of funding from government. Sorry, what did I say? Ipswich, Felixstowe and Lowestoft. Sorry.
Definitely not in Ipswich.
No, definitely not in Ipswich. Not even under a unitary authority. So I would like some assistance with Thriving Places, because one of the criteria is that I would ideally like ward support for the bids that are coming through, so that you actually are involved in and have eyes on what is going on in your wards and the funding streams that are coming through from your wards. So I'm not quite sure you are aware of that line in the funding bids, but I'd ideally like you to have sight of those funding bids. The money there is locally based. It's capital and revenue. I would like, ideally, ward councillor involvement. And I would like this to be seed funding in order to leverage in money from other organisations. If council puts seed funding in, it just gives assurance for other organisations to know that the project has been supported by the council and the ward councillors, and then that leverages in, hopefully, external funding, because we know funding is really tight. So Thriving Places is something I'd like some help with, and I'd like input from Scrutiny. The other one is the Lowestoft, Felixstowe and Leiston place boards. Again, they're locally based. There are members on them, but only a few members, cross-party, mostly business people, people from stakeholders from all walks of life, like education, business, Sizewell C. There are a lot of stakeholders in there. But they are, because they are locally based focused areas, I would like ward members to be more involved in inputting what they see as important legacy pieces or things that those place boards should be focusing on that maybe we haven't got sight of. So I'd like some assistance there as well. There are opportunities for development that maybe we haven't spotted, and maybe you as ward councillors have spotted, that could feed in. Is that all right, Chair?
That's fine. There's obviously a lot in the document, some with detail, some without detail, and the points that our lead has raised. Is there people who have any? I have one, but I'll let other people go first if they want to. Ruth.
Thank you very much. It's with regards to the Thriving Places. Can you tell us if you've received an application from our ward? Because it would be helpful if we don't know about it. How many applications have you received?
We've received over 40 expressions of interest so far, so they've been sifted and then recommendations are then made on whether they go to full application. I don't know off the top of my head if we've had anything from Woodbridge. I'd hoped, because the criteria states that you should engage with your ward member and ideally have the support, but I can double check to see if you have any. But if there has been any from Woodbridge, you should be aware because they would have been in contact with you.
I would hope so. I did recommend it to 3 big organisations and I haven't heard anything, so.
Yeah, so we can check, but if it's incumbent on them to make contact with you, so
Yeah.
it's the ball's in their court, but we can check.
You just want to explain what happens when the expression of interest comes in?
Yeah, so the expression of interest comes in, it's then assessed by officers in terms of, basically, does it meet the criteria set out? If it does, then it's advised to move forward to full application. Full application is then assessed by a panel, including Caroline as economic development portfolio holder, Vince as resources, and Sarah Whitelock as communities, because it's seen as a communities and economic development programme, and that assisted by myself and Nicole as officers on that panel in terms of making awards. There is a right of appeal if they feel that they have met the criteria, but so we can, and we will adjudge that and go through a process to understand.
Could I also just add that if an application comes through, which is a really good application, but it doesn't actually fit this criteria, we will try and signpost them to other forms of funding so those applications don't fail.
I'm going to just welcome Seamus Bennett in a minute. I've forgotten to welcome into this meeting. Paul, just when I was at the place board at Felixstowe the other day, the DWP were talking about, we were looking at funding for there, and she who said, look, don't bother trying to apply for funding from Sizewell C at the moment because you're not the right area. And her comment was, you're not even in the right area for your Leiston at the moment. So is there a bit of a funding block from that pot at the moment?
That was specifically referring to the community fund. I think it was probably an off-the-cuff remark. Awards are being made, but there's a priority area, which is the immediate area surrounding Leiston, which is fair, bearing in mind that's taking the brunt of the development. So I think there is some difficulty with people accessing funding, but I guess there's also big expectation of that fund. I'm not that close to it, but if there's further detail wanted on that on awards and how they're made, I can get that information. And Councillor Whitelock sits on the panel that awards that funding. I think she's advised by officers within the council as well as external, but it's managed by the Suffolk Community Foundation as well. But yeah, if there's further information required on that, we can provide that.
Perhaps the recommendation is to get a better understanding for councillors so they know what they can and cannot advise their residents. I ought to say good evening, Councillor Bennett. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Councillor Jepson. Hello, committee colleagues.
I'm sure there'll be some meeting, but I just want to recognise you were there, Seamus, so we'll come to you shortly, I'm sure. I've got Councillor Lynch, then Councillor Nimney.
Can I just clarify, is this what we think is the town's development fund? Or was that a different pot of money?
It's a different pot of money, but it can be aligned, so they can be used together, if that makes sense.
Okay, so, right. So given we've had such a poor internal audit, are we using the same criteria for the other fund on the way that we're going to manage it?
It's a different criteria because it's larger amounts of money we're talking about. The town development fund was up to £10,000 per area. With thriving places, it's up to £50,000.
Okay, Councillor Nimney.
Thank you, Chair. Your priority for EDR4, you mentioned Martello P feasibility project. I'm wondering whether you could consider widening that to include the surviving Martello Towers on the whole East Coast chain that's coming from Felixstowe all the way up to Aldborough. Because that's the historic context, and perhaps we need to be promoting that as possibly a walking route, etc., etc., etc. So, and that equally, could it perhaps be considered as becoming a part of the Landguard scheme, so that you actually have using the Martello Tower as a shop window to get you to Landguard, and equally the reserve and the bird observatory, the whole thing. So it's a package. So perhaps it could be a wider feasibility scheme across the piece.
So the reason it's just Martello P is because that we own Martello P and we have control over that site, so we can apply for funding to move that forward. The Martello Towers more generally are promoted in the work that we do on tourism, whether that be through the DMO or other sort of visitor attraction promotional things, and we do work closely with Landguard Trust in order to look at the whole military heritage as a tourist attraction, as we do across the wider military heritage across East Suffolk, because obviously it's clearly much more than just the Martello Towers. So the reason it's just specifically P is because we own that and we have a responsibility to maintain it, but we want to try and look at what the art of the possible is, hence the feasibility study.
Thank you. Perhaps nobody else has got a hand up at the moment. One close to my heart, as you'll remember from full council some time ago, was the First Light Festival funding. This week, Gateway at Bury St Edmunds, who's been operating for many years, shut its doors at very last minute, a bit like we had up here. You will know that my concern was that we seem to be spending a lot of money supporting First Light Festival, and nobody said it's not a good festival. It's the fact we've committed £500,000 over 3 years. Bearing in mind that charity and voluntary organisations are under increased pressure, are we absolutely confident that we are making sure that we audit everything that they do? I'm not saying they're run poorly at all, but we have committed a lot of money over 3 years.
Yeah, we're members of the governance board for First Light Festival, so Councillor Graham sits on that, and obviously that links into her role on Arts Council East. I think it's worth pointing out that our investment is match funding against the arts councils. They have stated that the East Suffolk Council's investments we're a secondary investor in comparison. The Arts Council put more money into it than East Suffolk Council. I think you're right, it's a significant amount of money, but it's the same level that we put in the previous 3 years. So if you take inflation into account, it has reduced significantly. So for the 23, 24, 25, we put in £500,000, we've put in another £500,000 for the next 3 years. So inflation adjusted, it's quite a reduction. I think the feeling from Cabinet, and I don't necessarily want to speak on behalf of Cabinet, was that they didn't want to reduce the absolute amount compared to the previous 3 years, and that would have led to a lesser festival. In terms of the measurement of its value, there's a comprehensive report done after each festival that sets out the metrics against what we are expecting. So things around the number of people attending, the reach of that. So one of the key metrics was around extending the reach of Lowestoft and marketing it to a wider area. I think that the wider profile that it gets in national media and press that First Light brings is also a big metric, but it's also about how it fits in with the wider regeneration programme. So with the Towns Fund money, ESC's capital programme and other external funding, we've got like a £50-60 million programme at the moment in Lowestoft. And the cultural side of that, the cultural festival, sort of promotes what's happening in the town, and it sits alongside the economic investment we're seeing through the offshore sector, education and skills, and it's across the board. So trying to make a holistic pitch, and we also sort of put this all together in prospectus for sort of UK Reef this year in terms of promoting the investable areas within Lowestoft. So I think the other thing about the investment made in First Light is that it was trying to secure its future post LGR. So this funds festivals this year, next year, and 28. So it bridges that gap. And then clearly it will be up to the successor authority whether they continue to see value in that and want to continue funding. But clearly the monitoring and evaluation post festival will be really important in coming to a decision on that.
Lovely, thank you. Are there no further questions for the leader? I'm not going to prolong this any further than I need to. No, I've got nothing. So, leader, you seem to have got away quite lightly.
So sorry, I'm going to drop myself in it because I really thought somebody.
Yes, that's going to answer.
They always tell me that. I thought somebody might have asked me about community wealth building, and as Dan Cleary actually had a meeting with me to tell me what he'd been doing, I thought somebody might ask me about it. So he has an officer that's working with him, Anne Utting, and they are looking at how we as a council can engage with anchor institutions to not only help with social value, because Paul can tell you loads about social value, for example, the post office and how much money they've invested in food banks and how many apprentices they're employing, etc., etc. But the community wealth building that Dan is specifically looking at is how to enable people to have the ability to make their own lives better. So where we have social value, where money is going to food bank or a uniform bank or something, that is a really worthwhile thing to do, but it's a sticking plaster. And what the community wealth building is aiming for is to enable people to earn a living or to be able to help themselves. So I just wanted to say that because I had a conversation with Dan, and it's something that we're exploring. We're in the very early days, but I think it's something really worth talking about. And with the marketplace, I think Councillor Nimley mentioned earlier, that all sort of like ties together. And I just wanted to say that work was going on there, just in case you'd missed it on the very extensive list. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. That prompted a question from Councillor Gage. There we are.
Yes, thank you. It's not in relation to that, but I'm very pleased to hear what you just said, and well done, Dan, on that one. So and the team. Just I'm not sure whether Caroline is departing at the end of this particular unit. You are staying. Okay.
She can leave off once we've done. Oh, okay. But you can leave the room. If we need to leave the room, she can leave the room.
Well, I wanted to just ask for an update just later on down the line, potentially in terms of the cultural review that we had, cultural quarter review, and some of the recommendations, because obviously in our report it's a blank at the moment, and it says to be picked up later on in the year. And I don't know whether now is the time to ask, and if I don't want to see you departing.
I think we could feed it in somewhere within this report.
We can.
So
yes.
I think it would be a sensible time to do it now. God, I had looked at that myself, but thank you. Yes, good one.
Thank you. Yes, given that I raised that issue, and we were really grateful to the local community representatives that we had from the local theatres and cultural quarter. And at the moment, we made lots of recommendations, one of which was the reinstitution of the cultural board. And at the moment, we haven't got anything in the documentation to suggest that that's happening, but I'm hoping it is. Can you confirm that it is?
Yeah, it is. We had an initial meeting, which was a round table to bring all the different organisations together to understand what they wanted out of the groups. Clearly, there was one that existed prior, but we wanted to have a clean start, as it were. So that's moved on. We've got a sort of list of priorities. One of them was particularly around young people and the arts and how we can encourage that. But it was, more generally how we collaborate as one against a sort of unified purpose. And in order to do that, because I felt that there was a need to create a new plan, a vision, a plan that everyone could get behind. And interestingly, we hosted the Arts Council the last 2 weeks in Lowestoft, looking at the cultural development regeneration. And as part of that, they've offered to support a vision and strategy document, working with all the different organisations, which we're obviously biting their hands off, saying, yeah, great, fantastic, with a view that they may be able to provide some funding as well to that, if it's in line with, what they're trying to do. So that's moving ahead. The sort of first proper meeting is due shortly. I think it's either next month. It's soon anyway. And it involves all the organisations that were around there, so all the local theatres, Lowestoft Vision, and other groups. And we've taken a role of sort of being a convener and facilitator, but we don't want to lead this. We want it to be led locally. So so we're hoping that we'll agree a sort of chair for the group next time, but also the Arts Council's involvement as well is very welcome. So yes, that is progressing.
Right, thank you. Yeah, Caroline, and then Mike.
Sorry, could I also just say we had Des from the Seagull Theatre present to the Community Partnership Board yesterday. And as people will know, the Seagull Theatre is leading on the City of Culture bid. And they've been asked to produce a postcard with a picture one side and 150 words on the other. And we suggested that maybe that postcard could be circulated more widely and could actually be used as a promotion, thank you, Mike. You should be sitting here with me. Of Lowestoft. So that's moving ahead. Shortlisting is not for some time yet, but the organisations are working together, which is good.
Lovely, thank you. Mike, did you have a question?
Yes, I've got to page 56 and I quickly look down the service and I look at the North Felixstowe Garden Neighbourhood project and can we have an update on that? Because the concern obviously, I think the concern is with regards to the Felixstowe Sports Council is the fact that we will undoubtedly have the existing facilities, both the leisure centre and the sports centre, running a lot longer than was expected. And it's really a question, is there enough in the budget to keep them fit for purpose until there may be a replacement sometime in the future, which is a part of the North Felixstowe Garden Neighbourhood Scheme project. Thank you.
It's not actually in my portfolio, Chair. So obviously the North Felixstowe Garden Neighbourhood is David Bevan's. Yeah. I think David's being scrutinised next month, isn't he? Not sure. Is that a question?
I believe we will look at that
next month.
Yeah.
And obviously the leisure centres is Sarah Whitelock. So I can't really help you with either of those questions. But if you hold that thought for next month and ask David Bevan, I'm sure he'd be able to help you, unless somebody would like to.
I think that was I think the budget was put in there. I did speak to Tim Snook yesterday, and he is looking at, does the leisure centre become a destination area? They used that phrase before, because of costs. So they're looking at it in great detail, but they are going to invest in the current one to make sure it's fit for purpose until, obviously we'll need to wait until we probably now have the unitary, because Ipswich want one, we want one. So I think possibly scale down and we get one that I think fits what we need, not this destination leisure centre, which I think we were likely to get. So, but that's just an informal briefing I had from Tim yesterday, but we can certainly use that with David next time. So there are no further questions. Is there any debate? I don't think there is. There was one loose recommendation, wasn't there? You didn't write it down, did you? And I can't remember it. Who was?
It was about the community fund in Leiston. Do you want some further information on it?
Yes, I think, yes, we were going to, that was Paul, wasn't it? You were going to give us just a...
Yes, but the Sizewell Community, sorry.
That's
Sizewell Community Fund, yeah, which is managed by Suffolk Community Foundation.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay then, well, if there's no... Seamus, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, Mark, I did. It was just in response on the North Felixstowe Garden Neighbourhood. But actually, what the summary that you gave there was pretty much what I was going to say. So I didn't think I wasn't going to butt in. But yeah, there is an investment, a significant investment going into Felixstowe Leisure Centre this calendar year that will keep it, that will not compromise any future need to it could be that the leisure centre needs to keep going and going. I think what they plan there is quite significant on the internal side, and that is going ahead. And then I think other options are now being looked at, as Mark alluded to. Lovely,
thank you, Seamus. Right, can I thank everybody for being here tonight? We do appreciate your time, and it's late, so thank you very much. We'll give you. Are you all departing? Yeah, we'll let you depart. Thanks. Thank you very much, and thank you, Seamus. Are you staying, Seamus, or are you going to go?
I don't know what would be the most appropriate, Sarah or Mark, what in this case.
Now, yeah, as you're not here, you can't vote or anything, so you can leave, Seamus.
All right,
Thank you very much. Right, we're going to move next to the agenda item, which is appointment to outside bodies. Are you covering that or am I? Oh, no, I do. The committee makes appointments to scrutiny related to outside bodies on an annual basis. Therefore, an appointment needs to be made for the Community Health Scrutiny Committee, and a nomination has been received for Councillor Thompson to remain as the primary representative and Councillor Byer as the nominated substitute. Are there any other nominations? If there are not, are we happy to have a proposer and a seconder? So there's no other, unless you don't want to do it. So you're proposing, and Councillor Nimley, you're seconding.
Yeah, I was.
But you're
Sorry, it'd be nice if we got a report back as to how the new ICB and the rest is working together and how it's
but
being.
that's obviously something different
That's what
to
we need.
the proposal for this. This is just nominating Councillor Thompson. So you're happy to second that? Yeah. Everyone in favour of that nomination? Yes, we're happy with that. Agenda item 7, overview and scrutiny annual report. Sarah, do you want to cover this?
I can, Chair. So as you know, it's a requirement of the Constitution that we present full council with an annual report of our activities. So I've worked with the Chair, Councillor Deacon, and we present to you the draft annual report. So if there are any comments or questions, we'll present it to you with a view to it being approved tonight, and then it will go to full council in July.
Thank you. I just thought you'd worked with Mike, and it's probably more appropriate to come from you, right? That was all. Any comments? It's a fairly comprehensive report. Any comments from anyone? Everybody happy to approve it? Do we need a proposer for that?
We do.
A proposer, Alan Green, seconder, Edward Back. Everyone in favour? Great.
If I may just add one more thing on that, one more comment. When we have external trainers in, I know that Sarah goes to great lengths to try to make sure that we're all accommodated for in terms of a light supper as such. And yeah, they're great quality training sessions with really good trainers, and it's just really helpful if everybody can make the absolute effort to turn up, because I know that Mike and Dan would really appreciate that, and I'm sure Sarah would too. Thanks.
Well said. I think it's there will be times when obviously people are on holiday or work commitments, but yes, we've been running with Chris Ossack, and there's been a very few there, which has been quite disappointing, and he still has the same motivation. So thank you, Louise, really good point. I'm moving to agenda item 8, update report on committee recommendations. That we do receive regular updates on their recommendations so they can track progress. This report provides an update on the recommendations made throughout the municipal year. Have people had a chance to look at them? I think there's some really good stuff here, actually, I have to say. And the calling was good. Are there any comments anyone has, or are they happy with the report? I think we're happy with the report. Who would like to propose? Ruth, I was looking at you, Ruth. Councillor Lynch to propose, Councillor Lynch to second. Everybody happy with that one? Don't look away there. And finally, draft work programme. Sorry, I've got to get ahead of myself here. So on the final page, is anybody wish to make any changes to the draft work programme or to approve it? We've got a fairly comprehensive list of work here. Taking Jeff's point earlier on, we've got enough of our East Suffolk business to be considering. There is one that I think you had actually mentioned, so I'll come to you, Louise. Are we talking that now or not? Do you know the one I mean?
I do know what you mean. It's up to you. We talked about when we were drafting the work programme, particularly around the September meeting. It is quite busy with I think it's the performance, council's performance, Councillor Ashton's cabinet member session, and then members wanted to talk about ESSL. And we talked about whether or not we wanted to do it in one very long session or to have two. So the chair and I were discussing this afternoon, in light of various issues that Councillor Topping may not wish us to raise today, whether or not you might want to have a longer meeting, which might be even longer still, as there was reference to including the rollout of simpler recycling as part of that meeting, if you recall, or whether you do want to split it and have simpler recycling and ESSL as a separate meeting.
I was perhaps I thought we could leave it in some, we can have a debate about it, but speak to Mike because he is the chair. I wouldn't want to make a decision whilst Mike's on here. Well, I'd like to make a decision, but that would wind him up. But my personal thought was, at the moment where we are with simpler recycling and some of the issues and some of our tenants' complaints, etc., I think if we were to try and include that with ESSL, maybe a little bit too much. So my recommendation to Mike would be that do we have to consider another meeting for that alone, or try and fit it in somewhere else? But I think to have two meaty subjects on one night may be a little bit too much. General thoughts just on that I suggested might we consider another day for that as well. Right. Louise, sorry, Louise, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would endorse that as well. I'll just say as well, I was on the Environment Task Group yesterday, and we have said that we need greater communication on that, and I'll leave Pip and Sally to apprise people of where we are on that one, but it is going to be looked at ETG as well, which is good. This is more a question of venues. I couldn't help but notice that we seem to be at East Suffolk House on the Trot, do we not? So
it's normally a good reason for that, I think. And I think Sarah's
October, haven't we? We've got October and November and December and January. Those of us that are low-staffed folk, what's happening? Thank you.
It is unfortunate, but when it was originally set, we had, I think there was two, and then we didn't have a December meeting, but we've obviously put the December meeting in. And bearing in mind who was kind of scheduled for those committees and availability in rooms and everything, it was a bit unfortunate. I can relook at it, but we were out of kilter anyway, and then adding that extra meeting in December kind of meant, it was even worse. But part of it was around who we've got coming, both officer and cabinet members. But I can relook at it if you wish.
I think, in fairness, we ought to see if we can at least get one more up here, because it is rather weighted. I'm pleased to say down there, but it does seem a little bit, the balance isn't quite fair. So we can speak to Mike and then blame Mike if he doesn't agree.
Ike's Felix though. So.
That'll be the chair's fault then. Mike.
I note on the 19th of November, we have the cabinet member for health. Can we have an update with regards to the effectiveness and reach of Marmot Place since it's been in existence? Because I think that will be it'll be 15 months or so since it's been rowed into the district. Sort of what progress they've made, what they're looking to do, etc., etc.
Yeah, we can cover that with Councillor Whitelock in December.
No, I was looking at the health portfolio. Or who did she come under?
Culture.
Sarah Whitelock.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one is, and I'll speak to Mike as well on this, because we are talking about hearing about recycling, but of course the Environmental Task Force look at the recycling, the bin, simpler recycling, and of course we try to limit the amount of duplication. Yeah. So it may well be that perhaps it goes to your committee first, Louise, as a result of what your committee think, whether they feel it should then be scrutinised as well. But we can speak to Mike as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, although I imagine because it's been such a rollout.
No.
Okay, so we will speak to Mike, but we'll do that portion. Okay, that's great. Anything else from Rob?
Sorry, Chair, just a quick one. And forgive me if it's at the end of scrutiny report, but I was just wondering, who scrutinises scrutiny, but how do we measure how we've been effective? On the decisions that we've put forward and recommendations, have we got a bit of a plan, how many of those have actually been taken on board and where we could, maybe some people pat themselves on the back, at the end of the year, that sort of thing.
I think it was, Mike's got it in his report, isn't it?
It should be in there, but I know, Sarah's looking at me.
Through Chair. Obviously, it's for us to scrutinise ourselves by the fact of our annual report being presented to full council. It's full council's opportunity then to look at that report, to see what we've been up to, if we've missed anything, any of those kind of conversations they want to have, any questions. So that's the wider full council's remit to scrutinise the scrutiny committee. And obviously we do also scrutinise ourselves once a year when we have our review meeting, when we look at what kind of things we've done and our processes and everything else. So those are our kind of checks and balances that we have in place.
I think it's also worth remembering that, touched on Louise's point, that if you go to the training by Chris Cossack, then we get a real flavour from Chris as to how effective are we as you can do it as a committee and also as an individual. But you look at yourself and tick box the what he's suggesting and realise, am I scrutinising as an individual as thoroughly as I can, or as we as a committee? So yeah, it's not patting ourselves on the back, but it's a good point. But that's certainly full council and ourselves being self-critical, Louise.
Oh, the training session, last training session with Chris, you'll know that he's watching our every move. So.
Which, if I may add, we have a little slogan that we should be saying before we have every single meeting. Yeah. If you remember, does anyone remember what that was about when we scrutinised?
Yes. So what? So what?
What do you mean?
So what?
Yeah, I can't remember. That's why I'm asking.
Lovely, thank you. That was some good points there. Thank you very much.
Can we approve it subject to a further conversation?
Yes, can we approve it subject to the approval with the chair, the proposals we have here? Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Do we need a proposer and seconder? Proposer is Ed, seconder is Mike. We all agreed it. So, yes.
Thank you.
Get that handed, yeah.
I will speak to Mike about the rooms as well.
So, committee, thank you for your support tonight. I think we are done. If we want to stay there while we close the meeting on YouTube. Thank you, Agnes.